All right, Jim, work your genius.
Andrew,
Come
I
on,
think
Jim.
actually,
This is what you do. I mean,
what?
you've demonstrated across almost 100 episodes that you have the gift.
Yeah.
So now let's see it.
If I'm not mistaken, it was the great poet who once said, right. I'm trying to think of all these like tags to roll into a
Yes.
thing. I do think that the word genius, I'm pretty sure that comes from Greek, and the genius being referred to there is something more like what we might think of today as like a guardian angel, kind
Okay.
of,
Yeah.
where like a person's genius isn't something that they possess within themselves. It's like a supernatural agent that is accompanying them, that like
Okay.
whispers to them how to do the thing that they're so good at, right?
Yes.
So if I had a
So
genius, it
yes,
has
yes.
it has
Use that.
abandoned me.
Let's use that, Jim. Use that.
It flew out the window. Let's say, Andrew,
Well, here, Jim. I'll get you. I'll at least I'll say something that requests a response, and we'll see how you
hmm,
respond.
yeah, you get me started and get me started getting started.
So, Jim, it's game season.
hmm Imagine the training montage. Everybody's getting ready for game season. Every day you're doing the things, but now it's competition day. It's time for competition, which pretty much always done in conjunction with a general like Highland Games kind of experience.
In North America, generally, yes.
Mm-hmm,
In Scotland, sort of yes. Although in Scotland, generally, not always.
mm-hmm,
Well,
mm-hmm,
maybe like 50-50. But in Scotland, the solos and the bands are much more delineated,
mm-hmm,
where some days you'll just play solos, some days you'll just do bands, and then some days it's both put together, like it
mm-hmm.
often is here in North America. But I mean, even the North American Championships in Maxville, that's solos in the morning and bands in the afternoon.
That's
Most
the
Highland
format we
games,
often experience. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of Highland games follow that. And certainly as a kid, my entire time coming up, that's what I did. Solos in the morning, band in the afternoon. And what I
Is
thought I
that
would do, what I thought we could do today, Jim, is let's talk through a successful day at the games.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's talk through a successful day at the games. Absolutely. I
Yes.
like it. As
And
I'm
we're going to
thinking to
go,
myself,
I'm thinking about how we're going to survive our day. I'm thinking about maybe some etiquette things.
hmm
I'm thinking about common mistakes that get made that we can
yeah.
avoid.
So, and are we thinking from the perspective of the solo slash band competitor or from the
hmm
perspective of the like goer, the ticket holder?
We could mostly the former, but maybe
hmm
a little bit of the latter.
Well,
Couldn't
in
hurt.
that case, then Andrew, like starting from the time my eyelids blink open in that morning, I know I'm gonna go solo, right?
Yeah.
So I've got a solo or two prepared. So I'm
No.
getting up early to get ready.
Yeah, like I think it actually starts the day before where we got to come up with a plan for the morning. Okay?
This is where I lay out my uniform on the bed before I go to sleep, right? I've it like in
Yeah.
order, like as if it's all prepared. It's just right.
Yeah,
First day of
certainly.
school.
And you got to make sure the shirt is ironed and you got to get all that done out of the way. You don't want to be doing that in the morning.
Mm,
Now, let's start with and so I'll just tell you what I do and maybe we'll pick up some tips and go be able to find some tangents along the way, but
yeah.
there's one important thing that it's taken me a long time to learn that is really going to play a big role in my morning, which is if I'm going to go to the games. So I'm going to figure out when my first competition is. Let's say I'm slated to go on at like 8:45 in the morning or something. Yikes, so early. Let's just call it 9. Let's call it 9 in the morning. Well, that means I want to be getting there around 8 if I'm on at 9 in the morning,
Yeah.
you know. Maybe even earlier depending on when things started cuz you really kind of want to check in with your steward pretty darn close to the scheduled start of the event. Even if you're on towards the end, you still want to check in. So I'm really kind of looking at when my first event starts. And I at least need to be there right around when it starts to check in with my steward. But let's say, just for argument's sake, that my first competition is around 9 o'clock. I'm going to get there around 8 o'clock is when I'm going to be there. And sometime shortly thereafter, I'm going to be checking in with my steward, right? So what does that mean? Well, I have to now calculate back how long is it going to take me to get to the park? And I
hmm
want to include a little bit of buffer room there in case there's traffic or, you know, I
Well, and
have
it never
trouble.
goes smooth to like park and walk your way over and find where the
Yeah.
competition area is, all that stuff.
Yep. So, we're kind of reverse engineering. So that means, let's say I'm going to leave my hotel around 7, but wait, Jim. Well, okay, so I got to leave the hotel around 7. So what time am I going to wake up?
Man, if I was leaving at 7, it depends on drive time, but I'm gonna give myself like an hour to get ready again because of unforeseen possible problems.
Yep. And you know what? Over the years, I've learned it takes me 2 hours to get ready. Here's why. Because you really don't want to have to rush. Okay.
Yeah.
That's the first thing. But the other thing is, and I'm going to try and put this as sensitively as I can for some of our more sensitive
I already
listeners.
know where you're going. Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of these Highland games are out there in the middle of nowhere. Porta potties are going to be your best option throughout the day.
And that's not a good option.
So let's just say there's certain things I need to make sure get taken care of before I leave the hotel.
I think we could also say that those certain things are sometimes affected by things like nerves. And so if you're feeling kind of nervous,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And they could be negatively or positively influenced. But I
Yeah.
often find that, here's what I often find. I get up and I sit down and relax and have a little cup of coffee, and things tend to start to work themselves out. You know what I mean?
That's a beautiful way to put it, actually. Love
Yeah.
that.
So, by the way, the Worlds is the worst example of this. The bathrooms are disgusting at the Worlds. So bad. And so, anyway, I digress. So, I'm actually getting up 2 hours before I have to leave.
Mhm.
Okay. And that lets me just kind of take my time with things. I just get up, have a little coffee, a little bit of whatever, and then I start milling around and so on and so forth. I might even, if I have the opportunity, I might even just blow my drones for a minute and make sure, and just make sure the bagpipe is working. I'm probably not going to put the chanter in and whatever. I'm not going to do any of that.
Especially not in your hotel room early in the morning.
Yeah, but I might get my pipes together and play my drones just for a few minutes just to make sure. The morning of the Worlds, I always do that. It makes me feel better. I'm going to the park and I know that we're good. And especially when you play cane drone reads, I just want to know. I just want to know that I'm good going into the day, if at all possible. But I would do that for other things too, I'm thinking.
Around that same
Yep, go
like
ahead.
that same time in the morning, like as in going through this day at the competitions thing, maybe it's just totally personal preference. Different people do this different ways. But like, I feel like some of us probably like to load up a good hearty breakfast, and that helps us to feel ready for a day of competing. Some of us, and I think I fall in this camp, kind of prefer to do the stuff empty stomached and kind of celebrate with a meal later. Any strong feelings either way, Andrew?
I'm a light breakfast kind of guy. Yeah, but depending on how nervous you are, you're not going to be able to scarf down a big breakfast or whatever. So, yeah, nothing too heavy. And then, you could get more serious about this and you could think about it. It's like, what do you need to perform it at your best? Yeah. And it's probably going to be a well-balanced breakfast of some kind, but nothing crazy huge. Maybe a couple pieces of fruit or something for part way through the morning when your small breakfast requires a little bit of a top up maybe, or something like that. Yeah.
Well, you know that at some point during the day, you're going to smell those Scotch eggs frying in oil, and
Ooh, yeah.
you're going to need to get some of that at some point. So.
Yeah. Yep. It depends how serious you are, but I would avoid like the yucky fried foods and stuff on the day of the competition. You want to eat stuff that's going to keep your mind clear.
No, I'll tell you what the fried fruit foods will do for you, Andrew, is make your burls amazingly fast and
That's true.
smooth.
That's true. And you know what? Maybe that's why my burl has, lost some of its quality over the years, is I
You
don't eat
stopped
as
eating
much
your fried
greasy food on the day
Yeah.
anymore.
That's
Maybe
right.
that's what it is. Just need a little bit of engine oil there for the burl. So anyway,
A lot of we often have like a carpool happening or something like that. Not always though.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have a family to get ready if they're coming along with us and we're all going at the same time. So
Yep.
whatever is going to go into that, we got to be planning for that, right?
yeah, and I'm not doing the carpool, man. Like do whatever you can to avoid the carpool unless you absolutely, utterly trust the other people in your party to be taking things as seriously as you. But man, nothing is worse than being held up by a bunch of fools. Okay, which just ramps up your anxiety and your nervousness because now you're wondering if you're even going to get there on time because what's his face was, hungover and didn't set his alarm and screwed it all up, and now he's ruined the entire day, right? How your day starts is so important on the games day, right?
Makes a big difference. And not to mention it's
if your
unnecessary.
whole morning gets ruined, right?
Because then your whole day is ruined.
Bad organization, it's typically not going to get a lot better in the afternoon. So you got to take it seriously.
The other danger with those carpools, of course, is that if you're doing them with friends, which it probably would be, it jeopardizes your relationship with what's his face, the fool. You don't want reasons to be upset with your friends. So.
Exactly. Yep. It's the same reason you don't loan money to friends. Bad idea.
So then as we're getting closer to the grounds, wherever the competition is being held, maybe we roll the window down to hear some of those
whoop, whoop.
sounds of bagpipes warming up,
Yes.
Do we all love that? Do any of us ever get tired of that? Or is that something that remains beautiful forever?
It definitely has character, Jim.
I feel like by the end of the day, I often am ready for a break, but usually early in the morning, that's a pump up kind of sound, to hear those sounds of preparation.
It's definitely quite something. Yeah. Quite something, Jim. But so there you go. And so you get to the games, then what do you do?
Well, you mentioned you're going to want to find your steward and check in. That's sounds like really good advice to me, to not be like, oh, I'll wait till 10 minutes before my competition slot and then go find them. You don't know if they're going to be right where you think they'll be and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you don't check in early with your steward, you're doing yourself and your competitors and the judge a disservice, right? It's just
and the steward stresses them out too.
Exactly. And so, you want to let the steward know, hey, I'm here. Can you check me in? You want to do that as early as you possibly can. Don't horse around with that. It's etiquette. It's etiquette for the good of the entire field. So, for example, if I'm warming up and I know I'm on in half an hour because 2 guys in front of me scratched, so you're on in half an hour. Okay, cool. So now I get my pipes out and I start to warm up. Now, Jim, right? That's you.
Yeah, I figured.
I want to be clear how I feel about this. Now Jim comes 10 minutes before and he checks in. So now I'm going to end up warming up for 35 minutes instead of 30 because Jim is right. Do you have to mark this podcast as profane now, or are we still no, we're still PG.
Yeah, and I can just do really classy edits too, so don't worry about that. Okay.
Yeah, but so Jim decided
say it as many times as you want. I don't even
and the
care.
steward isn't going to be like, yo, Jim, you're a the steward is just going to put him in. Even though what the steward should do is say, Jim, you missed your opportunity. You're out. That's what they should do. But it's not usually what happens. Usually the stewards are like, they decide to be nice and let the person play, even though they did not check in when they were supposed to. But see how that just screws it up for everybody. So now, because I had to warm up 5 or 10 extra minutes because of the heads that checked in late, so now I've been playing my pipes for 40 minutes to get warmed up instead of 30 because things keep changing on me, right? So now I've played for 40 minutes instead of 30. So now I start my P-Brock, but right after the ground, my drones start going wildly out of tune because now they've gotten wet because I had to play much longer to warm up than I anticipated because Jim was a So checking in with the steward early is one of the best things you can do etiquette-wise on the day of a competition.
It'll do a lot for your own personal nerves and stuff too, I think,
course.
Just because then you're seeing where the judging table is, like you've got all that checked off. Now you can focus on your music.
Yes. And by the way, you might check in with the steward. You might not even be dressed yet because you're on much later in the event. That's cool. I dig that. No problem. You just go over and say, hey, I'm Andrew Douglas. I am here, but I'm not on for a while. And the steward looks at the sheet. And the steward might say, actually, 7 people haven't checked in with me yet. So you might be sooner on than you think. So you might be like, ooh, maybe, something like that might happen. Another good reason to check in early.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they're like, cool, we'll see you in looks like about 2 hours. And I used to check in before my event even really started because other events were going on. But I was just like, hey, I'm Andrew Douglas. I think I'm on in the next event. And the steward looks forward and they're like, yep, I got you here. And they check you off. So they know that you're there.
To be clear, when you say you might not even be dressed yet, You do mean not yet in kilt. You're not endorsing showing up to a competition in the nude.
No, but it's not unheard of, Jim.
Great.
I won't name any names, but there's one person I know that was particularly famous for not wearing much until it was time to put the kilt on.
Is that like a strategy for...
Unfortunately, it was an older man.
Yeah, it might be
Nobody
part
wants
of the
that.
game to get into your competitors' heads, really
Maybe.
mess with them.
Yes. But I think really you should be playing for self-expression and not for accolades.
Mm.
So there we go. So we're checking in with the steward and whatever. And then what are we doing? Well, I think we talked about in the recent episode, we want the warm up to be minimal.
Yeah.
How long are you warming up for these events, Jim?
Well, I always warm up for way too long and shoot
Yeah.
myself in the foot as a result. That's how long. So
Yep. So I would do my normal thing I would do any day, which is maybe over back by my car. I'd play my pipes for about 5 to 10 minutes. Cool. And
that's when you first
Yep.
arrive, or that's when you know you're getting close. Like, I'm just saying, like,
maybe about
back
an
by
hour.
your car, is that like your favorite place to warm up? Or do you have other strategies for finding a spot?
Yeah, well, hang with me here. Hang with me.
Okay.
Bear with me here, Jim. So about an hour, let's say, before my first event, I'm going to play for 5 to 10 minutes by my car. 10 minutes if it's perfect weather, and less than that if it's perhaps suboptimal. But I'm just going to play for a couple minutes by the car. Going to make sure everything's working. Going to make sure, things are going about as planned. And then from there, I'm going to be done playing for a while. All right. And when it's time to wander up towards my event, because I know I'm on fairly soon, I will do that. I usually don't bring my pipe case with me. Some players love to travel around with a pipe case. It's certainly fair game, right? If you bring the pipe case with you, that gives you some storage space and you got your maintenance gear there in case of any emergencies. Maybe you could throw an umbrella in there in case it starts to rain, or some sunblock, or maybe your snacks could go in there. It depends how far away from the car the events are and all that stuff. But yeah, after that, I'll head up to the event. Okay. And my pipes are going, they're feeling good. And then, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes before I'm on, I'm going to do 15-minute warm up. Then I'm going to play my tune.
When you say 15-minute warm up, is that like shooting for 15 minutes of solid play, or is that like play through the tune, take a break, play through the tune, take a break?
Maybe 3 to 5 minutes of just getting the fingers going, tuning the pipes a little bit, working through some hot spots. Then maybe take a little break. Yeah, I'm talking about like on and off playing.
Yeah.
Maybe on average, 1 minute on, 1 minute off or something for about 15 minutes. As you get closer to the event, though, you might want to play more continuously. So maybe the last 5 minutes before you're on, maybe when you're on deck, you're playing fairly continuously. The reason for that would be we want to get our pipes up to that pitch where they're going to be as stable as reasonably possible. So you might play more continuously at that point. It all depends. I mean, different things you do different ways.
I often feel nervous about playing anywhere close to where the competition is happening, just because I don't want to mess up somebody else's solo.
Amen, Jim. Yeah, you should be at least 100 feet from any platform. At least,
and any platform
how
is
far is
important
100 feet?
Because it's like that times 30.
At least 100 feet.
And it's important that you say any platform, because keeping in mind that there might be multiple platforms, multiple spots where competitions are happening, and those will be spaced out as well. So if you're only looking at one and you walk away from it and then start playing, you might not realize that right behind you is another one. Kind of got to scope the place out.
Yep. So there's that. And then, hopefully you'll also have someone nearby to help you with your tuning, right? That's something I really recommend people do. And then that way you can flag them down when you're on next. That's when you want your expert tuner person to head over, double check your pipes and make any final tweaks and help you get your pipes sounding their best. Okay. And then we're going to go on.
I have a hard enough time tuning myself, like in my backyard on a relaxed afternoon. When I've got the nerves of competition and other people's bagpipes in my ears and all that kind of stuff, I am lost when it comes to tuning my drones. So
sure.
that's
something
definitely benefit from.
That's something I want you to get better at over time, right? But the day of the competition is not the day for you to work on your tuning, right? The day of competition is your day to play the tune. Just like if we're on a basketball team, I want my team to be in shape. On game day, We're not going to do interval training on game
Right.
day. And game day
Yeah.
is for just going with what we've got for now and putting ourselves in the best position to do our personal best. And in many cases, right? Anyone who's still in that learning stage, you really want to have help on the day to take tuning off your plate. Everyone should do that.
So for the like taking a quick hop over into the spectator's view, a spectator for the games has pulled up, has walked in, is walking around, looking around. They hear all this bagpipe madness going on over in this one part of the park or wherever they are, like a lot of different bagpipers playing at the same time.
Yep.
This is what's going on. Some of them are warming up. Some of them are
Yep.
tuning. Some of them are getting ready. Some of them are competing, and maybe multiple competing at the same time in different spots.
Yeah, most games will have, let's say 10 platforms. There's 10 different judges there, and you'll be doing that.
And
By
so
the
then,
way, the best laid plans of mice and men. How's the rest of that go? I don't know. But anyway.
the road to hell is paved with good intentions, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But anyway, a lot of times your plan to have someone help you tune on the day falls through and they're busy or whatever. But go find somebody else. You know who the good players are and ask them for help. When I played in British Columbia, this is constantly happening and it's part of the culture. And you're always, even if you never met the kid before or the adult for that matter, I've never met this person before, but they're asking me for help tuning. No problem. Every piper is going to be willing to help.
That's like asking someone for a spot at the gym.
Exactly. Except
look
even
at
less
me.
pretentious, probably. Yeah.
I don't
Like-
actually know what gym etiquette is either. I'm just trying to seem like I know what I'm talking about. So.
Yeah, but everybody's willing to help, right?
Mhm.
People helped me when I was a kid. And so therefore I'd be thrilled to help other people. And that would be universally true.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, if you go up to someone and ask them for help tuning and they refuse, we have a hotline called 1-800-TUNING-REFUSAL and report that piper to us. And we'll make sure they're thrown in the brig,
Yeah.
that they have to walk the plank. No, everyone will help. Everyone's always happy to help. Even if it's just them helping you get those drones locked in, man, it allows you to just relax and focus on your tune.
So then, like, what is oh man, I just lost the word for it. The little staging area right before you go on. What is that
Final
called?
tuning?
Yeah, the final tuning area. I felt like there was a one-word name for
On deck?
that spot. On deck, that's what I was looking for. So you're prepared. It's about time to go. Do you head for the deck to be on deck 5 minutes before your time?
So as soon as the person before you starts playing, that's
Their
when you're in.
competition.
Yeah, so there you can, and you'll be able to see them from the on deck
Mhm.
position.
Yeah.
As soon as they walk up to the judge, then the on deck space is yours. And if they're going to play a P-Brock, that's different. But most solos take about 5 minutes.
Mhm.
So that means, if you want to play for give or take 5 minutes continuously, this is your moment, while they're on deck. And then, flag down your tuning helper person, let them know, hey, I'm on deck. And then they'll kind of be there to help settle you down and get your pipes in tune and guide you a little bit. And then you go on. Amazing.
And to be clear, even for those of us like me who have been doing this for a while but still feel a little shaky about what exactly is going on, you're not yet being judged when you're on deck.
Correct.
Like your competition has not yet started for you personally.
Yeah. Yep. Unless you're doing some really weird, douchey stuff that the judge notices.
Maybe they'll be judging you, sure, right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And then, once the person in front of you stops, I'm usually pretty conservative about my behavior at that point. Like, I'm not going to be playing Pumpkins Fancy at 200 beats per minute. That's, because then the judge sees that and they're like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Listen to those
that can-
crossing noises, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they'll be taking notes in their head if not on their paper. But that can be a weird moment, that feeling of like you see that the person before you finished, they kind of like nod to the judge and walk away. And you can see that the judge is like still writing, like they're very focused on what they're doing. And like I always feel kind of tentative at that point, like tiptoeing my way into the competition spot and being like, hello, is it my time? Should I play? What do you do there? Do you just stand back on deck still, giving them their physical space to finish what they're doing?
That's right. You stand back on deck and you wait for the signal. The signal might come from the steward or the judge might, give you a little, they'll look up at you and they'll kind of know that
They'll
you're
wave you
next.
over or something.
Yeah.
and-
Yep. And there's usually 1 to 2 minutes in between competitions, give or take. So when the person in front of you is done playing It's tempting to panic and feel like you're on now, but you actually have a couple of minutes
Yeah.
to do what you got to do. Grab a sip of water, make sure one more time the drones are locked, and then head on over.
So then, whether you've got like maybe a little raised platform, or you've got maybe a circle painted in the grass or something, where does the judging start? Is it when you cross that threshold, or still not yet?
No. So the judging technically does not start until you start your tune.
When those drones come in.
Well, no, and it doesn't start then either, because as a solo competitor, you have a certain amount of time allowed for tweaking the tuning of your pipes and getting things settled. So
Is you say a certain amount, is that prescribed, or is
it
that
is.
different from competition to competition, or?
On paper, it's prescribed. Every association that I know of, especially in North America, will give you an amount of time that you're allowed to tune for. In the
The amount of
USPBA,
time might change, but there's going to be some amount of time.
yes. And I believe, generally speaking, it's 3 minutes is sort of the thing. And typically, this is not timed and it's approximate, and you can go a little bit over and no one's going to care, typically. Now, some high prestige events in the professional grade, and every now and then in grade 1, you'll have tuning timers where you must not go over the time or you'll be disqualified. But that's very rare. So it's just a guideline. And by the way, it's also very rare, especially in an outdoor event, that you should need 3 minutes of tuning.
Sure. At that point, if you got something that needs fixing, you might need more than 3 minutes to fix it. So probably
Now,
not so much.
if you're going to play a grade 1 or professional level PBROC where the tune is 15 minutes long, that might be an exception to what I just said. But if you're going to play an MSR, I mean, you've been warming up in the same conditions you're going to play in, and then you go in the judge and you tell them your tunes. So when you fire up, you might have 30 seconds or so to get your chanter to come back up to pitch, maybe a few more seconds to lock the drones in one more time, but then you should be good to go at these outdoor events.
That you bring up a good point, Andrew, because sometimes the judge might be really direct, like you're on deck and the judge says, okay, come on over. And as you're coming over, they say, what are you going to play today? But they might be in the flow state of doing these competitions. You might be competitor number 12 of the day or 30 of the day. So is it when you first step into that playing space that you walk right up to the judge and say, hello, this is my name, this is what I'm playing?
I just say, for me, I'm always more casual, as you can see. So I usually say, hey, how you doing? And by this point, I know most of the judges, so we know each other by name. But if you haven't met the judges before, you might say, hi, how are you? My name is fill in the blank. But sometimes the judge will greet you. So by the time you're up to the table, the judge will say, good morning, you must be Jim. And then you'll say,
Heard a
yes,
lot
I am.
about you.
They won't say that if they're a professional. They will just say, hello.
Oh, I thought maybe
Jim.
they would have heard all the ranting about Jim by then.
That's true. Yeah, you were the guy tuning up just 50 feet from the platform. I know exactly who you are. Well, yeah. So, but yes, and then you just and they'll usually ask you for the information they need. So a lot of times it's, hey, what's your tune for today? And then if you're in the higher levels, hey, I need 3 marches from you. And then you'll give them the 3 marches and so on and so forth.
And so having established what you're there to play, then you have your 3 minutes grace to kind of do final
Once you
prep and
strike
stuff.
at your pipes, the first chanter note goes, start the 3-minute clock from there. Like I said, but like you said, it's probably not going to take 3 minutes. But you want to take a little while, right? You take a little while, play a few notes, get the drones in tune. And by the way, I usually then, once things are going, you don't have to like stop your pipes and restart them again or anything like that. You just kind of get the pipes going. You get to the point where you're feeling good. You may or may not kind of look over to the judge and say, here I go, buddy. Or you can just start. The judge is going to know when the tune starts. So, you get things settled and then you just start the tune.
And that's interesting, actually. I had not realized that. I was thinking you had to stop so that then you kind of had like a competing strike in. You know what I mean? Like an official.
As a matter of fact, don't do that. There's nothing really to be gained from that. And then if anything, all the nice tuning you did, who knows? Maybe a tiny droplet of moisture when you restrike the pipes in moves around a little bit. And now you're out of tune again. Or I don't know. But like, yeah, don't do that. Just to get the pipes going, get things settled, get yourself feeling good. And then you'll just fire away.
What if you were to turn your back to the judge while you're getting ready? Just like turn around completely, do your playing a little bit, and then you turn around to face them and that's when you start playing.
Yeah, I mean, I generally don't like turning my back on the judge.
Because they're dangerous.
And I don't want judges staring at my butt or anything. So, no, I usually just play. This is part of it. It's good that you raise these questions because as a judge, I often think to myself, oh, this person doesn't quite understand what we do yet. It's something because, yeah, you just wouldn't do that. So once you're a seasoned competitor, yeah, there's no shame. It's part of the process. You strike up your pipes and, like the little Pibroch wander walk thing.
Yeah.
That's usually what I do when I'm tuning. I'm strike the pipes and do a little Pibroch wander, play a little bit of a slow air or a Pibroch or variation or something like that, just to settle my nerves and to get the chanter a chance to come back up to pitch maybe a little bit. Then I'm going to reach up and I'm going to tune my drones. I'm relaxed. This is normal. It can feel a little bit naked-ish when the first few times you do it, but this is what you're supposed to do. This is the culture that we have as solo competitors. So you get in there and settle yourself, get the pipes locked the way you want. And then when you're ready, you just start playing. You could do a nice long introductory E note or something like that, or a nice long low A before you start. That's usually a good indication to the judge that, things are about to happen. And then once it starts to happen, and only at that point will the judge start to evaluate your playing. Like only once you start the actual tunes.
That's when the judging starts. Would you ever play a snatch of what you're about to compete with in that little intro?
Never. And I would also not play anything in the specific category. Right? So if I'm going to play a 2/4 march, I'm not going to warm up with a different 2/4 march. And I'm definitely not going to warm up with part of the tune. And in some cases, it might be grounds for disqualification. If the judge misinterprets what you're doing as starting the tune.
Yeah, I can see how that could be.
And then you stop it and you start it again. So anyway, it's usually something chill is usually what I'm doing. Something chill. It could be a slow air. It could be a variation of a Pibroch is pretty typical, especially at the higher levels. Or it could be maybe a 4/4 march or a 3/4 march, maybe played a little bit slowly. Just, I don't know, something that settles you.
You
chill,
want to know?
Chill.
Do you want to know what I do, Andrew?
As long as it's chill, I want to know.
It's pretty chill. And I don't, maybe it's not funny. Maybe it's something that everybody does. But like, I think probably a lot of us develop these little motifs that we use to check tuning.
For sure.
And my concern is always my high G. That's always my first concern. And the opening line of that great song from the Goofy movie.
By the way, the high G should not be a concern. Because
none of it should be a concern, right? Because I should be solid by then.
That's right. You should not be doing much here other than just settling things. Okay.
Yeah.
So the high G should not be a concern because you've prepared intelligently. In the last few minutes before you went on, that's when you did your major checking of these notes.
Well, maybe this is, in the ideal situation, this is really just reassuring myself that everything is in as it ought to be. But there's that opening bit from that song. It's Max, Goofy's son, Max, is singing, "They've been laughing since I can't remember." So I can do that on my chanter. For me at least, it's a memorable melody line that uses that flattened seventh. So I go E, F, G, F, E, F, E, D, E, C. And I hear that G and that sounds about right. I'm like, okay, I'm in good shape.
That's some really dorky stuff right there. You can find a nice classic bagpipe melody that the judge recognizes and enjoys and do that instead.
Yeah, but the Goofy movie takes up a pretty big portion of my brain. So I might not have room for other stuff.
I like Not a Swan on the Lake is a good one to get some of the dark notes in there.
Oh, yeah, I like the song. Yeah.
So it's got a lot of those. And then now we get up. Now, like, so those notes are good. I'm liking it. Not on the Swan on the Lake, right? That's a good one. I will often kind of play that during my warm-ups, especially if the tune that I'm about to play has a lot of those notes in it. But it's a good way to check my D and my high G and just make sure I'm blowing steadily and I'm liking how everything sounds.
What
It's
we've
also a cool
established
tune,
here
but it's
is
also a
that-
cool tune. Like it's a tune that the judge is going to be like, huh, this bagpipe sounds great and I like this tune.
Yeah.
Now, you're not officially being judged yet, but like, I don't know about you, but you might as well impress the judge during these times.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And it's fun. It's fun to like, you can see the judge enjoying the sound of your pipes and your playing and everything.
Yeah.
It's fun. We like
So we've got at least two really good options. At least two really great options for what you could do there. Not a Swan on the Lake, a Goofy movie.
this. No.
There are
Goofy
probably
movie,
others,
no,
but those are
Jim.
two.
No,
That's what.
stop that. Stop with the Goofy movie crap. Don't do that.
All right. So then you play your solo, and when you're done,
Goofy
Wait,
movie.
it can be so awkward when you finish.
Doing the freaking Goofy movie and he's playing the solos. Unreal.
It can feel awkward when you finish playing because you stop. You've been playing. You've been in the zone. You stop. There's like a ringing silence, even with bagpipes all around. Yeah.
Yes.
What do you do? It's like, thank you. Bye. What's the etiquette there? How do you get out of there?
Okay, so I've seen some people do the salute thing. I feel strongly that the salute is really only appropriate if you are a military person of some kind, or or if that's like if that's what you're repping is like the military, or maybe you're a police officer or something where people would salute. Like that seems cool, and it seems to work. When military, or I guess it doesn't have to be military, but that style of player does that. That seems to really work well. For me, I'm very civilian. You know what I'm saying? I'm like an extreme, as civilians go, I'm up there.
I'm with you there. Or down there, whichever it is. I'm so very not in military mode ever. I'm very civilian. Yeah.
So I think I do a slight bow. I look the judge in the eye and I say, thanks very much. And then I walk off. That's it. Or maybe I say, maybe not even thank you very much. I think I just say, thank you. And then I leave.
You don't try to sneak a peek at what they're writing or come up closer to the table or anything like that.
No. I know what the judge is writing. Wow. Loved it.
That's right. Over and over again. Wow.
Wow. Loved it. Didn't love it as much as I loved Nick Hudson, but I loved it. It's usually something like that.
Yeah. Okay. So then you're out of there. A lot of times we're going to sign up for more than one event. So
yeah, it's a great point.
Like are you just straight over to being on deck for your next event, or is it different from day to day? What do you do then?
With any luck, there's not a long break between events. So you can kind of, just head over towards the other event and you're maybe already fairly close to being on deck soon. But yeah, you're just doing the same thing again, which by the way, is another reason to keep your warm-ups for these events pretty short. Because if you warm up for an hour for the first event, and then you warm up for an hour for the second event, and then you warm up an hour for the third event, I mean, your pipes haven't been in tune most of the morning, right?
Yeah.
So we want to keep those warm-ups pretty brief. We want to have a plan.
Having done a few volunteer stints where I helped organize the competitions, like the schedules and stuff like that, and then stewarded for them, I've been surprised when just a few times over the years, I've had some pipers, never drummers. Drummers are so chill, I think.
Lies.
But I've had a few times I've had some pipers reach out to me really upset that their events were set up such that they had between 5 and 15 minutes between each one. Yeah. And maybe just not understanding that I did that on purpose. That actually took a lot of work and planning to make it that way. That was hard. But they wanted to have hours and hours in between.
I know.
To kind of do the whole thing all over again.
They don't know it, but they're wrong about that. You want them to be close together.
Yeah.
At least at the typical games. It might be different if you're competing for the gold medal at Inverness,
Sure.
You don't want to, you want a nice break between those. But also, what do you do when you practice? When you practice, you take a half an hour to an hour and you do it all in that window of time, right? Why would you want it different on the day? I don't understand that. Logistics, by the way, might be scary, but again, communication with the stewards and it'll always work out. So let's say you have two things that are scheduled, for lack of a better term, on top of each other. Just talk to the stewards. Hey, just so you know, my P-Rock is scheduled at the same time. Would it be cool to put me on a little bit later? I'll come over as soon as I'm done. And the steward will be like, absolutely no problem. And that's the steward's job, is to arrange the air traffic for each event. Or you could even offer to go earlier if you want to. It's it's not really something I would offer unless I was in a pinch and I had to. I'd always rather go later. The warmer the day, the better my pipes are going to sound. So the later I can play, even if it's just by 15 minutes or something, could sometimes make a difference. But yeah, you work with the steward, and yeah, I would prefer to be on all close together, I think.
Yeah, I feel like just all of the rigmarole of getting struck in and warming up and tuning up and all that, having to do that more than
and
once.
the pain, right? And the pain, like nothing is worse than emotional pain. I mean, Jim, like nothing is worse than you waiting around for 90 minutes to do your last event, and then you do a crappy job.
Yeah.
So that just 2 hours of the day wasted on something that ended up coming out kind of crappy. How often would you say that your performances come out kind of crappy?
Always.
Yeah, well, I mean, like regularly. That's part of being a beginner. That's part of being an intermediate, is sometimes you're going to be like, oh, crap, screwed that one up. Right? And that's part of the game. And you don't want that spread across a whole morning. Right? You just line them up, knock them down. That would be the optimal way to do it. I feel like games are scheduling now to try and keep everything far apart. That's a mistake, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It should be like, lower grades in the morning, and then as the morning goes on, the higher grades begin.
Yeah.
And it's not something that should be spaced out so far. Man, it's just so depressing when that's the case.
And that always strikes me as like really useful too for the other competitors, like the lower grade competitors, because they can then have their nerves all kind of finished up with, and then go and enjoy hearing the higher grade players play. And spectators as well, like ticket holders, are going to be showing up more and more as the day progresses. So if they want to hear quality piping, no offense to those of us who are playing earlier in the morning, but I understand that like having the grade 2s and the grade 1s closer to the middle of the day
it's a good
is
point.
going to provide that for the spectators, and that's good for the art form.
Yes.
But then as that day progresses, then often at some point near midday, there might be some kind of masked bands event happening. And if I'm not mistaken, that's usually then the other half of the day is usually when you're going to start hearing the band competitions.
Yes.
So I've done my solos. I get the call that it's time for mass bands. I join my band for that. Go and do that whole thing. And now it's band time.
Yeah, it is band time.
I've had my Scotch egg, so I'm ready for some lightning fast burls.
In the bands I've played in over the years, typically, if your solos overlapped with the mass bands, typically it was okay to not do that opening mass bands. So I seem to remember missing out on a lot of opening mass bands. And by the way, sometimes I finish with enough time to get back to the mass bands, but then something comes up. You kind of don't move
super fast.
Yeah, something comes up, yeah.
Yeah, I know pipers like you.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a lot, It's a lot. And then you got these lazy bums. They're not even playing the solos. Have them play the opening mass bands. But I digress. Yeah, opening mass bands. Is there anything we need to discuss there? Not much to it.
Probably not yet. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
It's always fun. I do like that even after a lot of years, anything, Scotland the Brave, anything, it's still really fun to... Oh, no, Andrew, you know what we should maybe talk about as far as like playing etiquette stuff goes is a lot of times you have to do a counter march with the mass bands where you march forward and then you turn and march back the other way.
I don't want to talk about that.
You don't want to?
It's always a cluster.
It is. That's the thing, right? I just wanted to ask you if you feel like it's okay to stop playing and clutch your drones to your heart to keep them safe.
Yeah.
Is that acceptable?
Yes. Yep. Sure is.
Okay, then.
But that's just drum majors. Drum majors got to like either try to figure that out, or maybe they've just given up and it's not going to happen. Yeah. But then, you just do what you got to do. So there you go. Or we're not talking about that. We'll have to have a drum major on. They can talk about that.
Deal. Kevin Conquest, we want to talk to you sometime. I'm assuming he's listening.
Kevin, I remember Kevin. He's sort of like Westbaba drum major guru type guy.
Yeah, that's why I say Kevin, because he's at just about every event over here. So.
Oh yeah. And who's the singer guy? He's at every event too. Charlie Zahn.
Oh,
is he still at all the events?
Is he always singing like the national anthems and stuff like that? Is that why?
We should have him on the podcast sometime.
I've never met him, but I'm
Legend.
sure I've heard him singing. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. Okay, there you go. So, yeah,
Band
and then
time.
band time comes
Yeah.
around. What do we got to talk about here?
Well, I'll tell you one of the pain points that I've experienced before is herding the cats, like wrangling everybody together as like maybe our competition slot isn't necessarily happening right this minute, but geez, I would really like to have the band together at the band tent a while before,
Yep.
to do prep. And it's like hard to chase everybody down. Some of them are off buying swords.
Yep. So
Some of them are off eating Scotch eggs.
it's actually easier now with social media than it was when I was a kid. But every good band I've played with has a published schedule of events for the bands. So in the old days, it used to be on the whiteboard. And
Oh, yeah.
the whiteboard we would put by the band tent, and it would say when you needed to be there for stuff. In Inverary, Stuart sends out a very detailed schedule of events on the Facebook Messenger group for the band.
And to be clear, that's not just like the events that are happening for spectators. That's saying you band members at this time, I
Yeah.
need you at this place.
Yep. In Inverary, it goes something like this. Meet at this time for an initial blow. And that's usually about 2 hours before our performance. But then after that, then there's other stuff that we do. We do maybe a little practice chant rehearsal real quick. And then there's a little bit of time allotted to people going pee if they got to go pee and whatever, and do the things that you got to do. And then there's sort of like a official warm up start time, which is where everyone's going to be standing there in the circle, working together to get the sound going. And most good bands operate in that way. I know that Maureen Connor, who runs the kids band here in the Albany region, very well-known kids program. And I think she still calls it lockdown, but like during COVID, it was like, yikes. We might have to change the name of that one. But yeah, they have lockdown. So basically she's not that specific. She's just like, by the way, people, you are locked down as of, and I think it's usually 2 hours before performance time. And like, that's
Don't
when
leave the
you're,
tent, that kind of thing.
you're not leaving the tent area after that point.
As a band member,
If you wanna
as
play.
a piper's, yeah, I got you there. Yeah. As we're getting closer to the like competition time, and like you mentioned, we get into the circle and we're playing and stuff like that. At what point do you, or would I, as the rank and file piper, not take my pipes off my shoulder again? You know what I mean? Like maybe throughout the couple hours leading up to it, I'm kind of on and off, back and forth. But at what point am I like locked in, to use that term, and like I'm going to stay standing. I'm going to keep my pipes on my shoulder.
Yeah, that's all up to the pipe major, and you'll know that, like, depending on your band's routine, you'll know what you should be doing.
Okay. What about marching to the competition circle? How do you feel about bands playing through the fairgrounds on their way to the competition circle?
I feel good about just going from the final tuning area to the line and playing a little tune as a group. That feels good to me. And it's sort of like a nice tradition, and you can play one of your band's favorite tunes. But parading through the fairgrounds, probably not. Unless there's a really important strategic reason you might do that.
Sometimes I feel like it can be really cool to see, but my worry about it is usually that you're probably going to be going past like maybe the dancers, maybe going past
Or other bands.
Other bands who are playing, maybe even competing. You might be going past like stage entertainment. There might be like an acoustic set going on, and you're going to go marching right past it.
This sounds like something Jim the would do.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That alter ego, that person that's definitely not me.
Yeah, so unless you really needed to do it for some reason, I would say no. I remember one year at maybe Bridge of Allen games or something in Oran Moore, we did do it because it was raining so hard that we actually tuned up the pipes on the bus. This is kind of like old school.
Interesting.
This is kind of old school thinking, but it was raining so hard that we actually stayed on the bus and tuned the chanters and got ourselves sounding as good as we can. And then what we told people was, and then we were going to just, basically go straight to final tuning and straight on the field.
And then march right back to the bus again after.
Oh yeah, big time. But what we did is, because it was going to take a couple minutes to get there, what we told people is get off the bus and just play your pipes continuously all the way to final tuning. We didn't form up as a band and march around, but it was like the snake of playing pipers. And we just went to final tuning, and then we did whatever and went on the field. And the cool thing about that story is I think we actually won that day.
So it worked.
Well, it kind of worked. Yeah, we won the grade 1 that day. Inverary did not play because the weather was so bad. So of the bands that were foolish enough to play, Oran Moore won the grade 1.
So 2 things to remember if you want to win. Number 1, play continuously off the bus. And number 2, try to get your strong competition to not compete. Both those things will help.
Yeah. It's all fun and games until, they do show up and then they trounce you. But there you go.
So then for a band to go from like maybe what is final tuning exactly? Is this a circle outside the circle where I can circle up and do whatever I want? Or are there some strict rules there?
Well, it's the same as the on deck thing. It's the same concept as being on deck in the solos. It's the on deck position for the bands. And oftentimes it's a very sort of specific location where they say like, this is final tuning. It's the on deck spot. And yeah, when you're in final tuning, you could do whatever you want. For most bands, it's a chance to just, try and lock the drones in one last time, maybe catch any out of tune notes, and maybe do a couple of little highlight sections with the drummers before you form up and go on and compete formally. Often a little bit of panic mixed in there, because that's what you should do.
Always, right?
That's what you should do when you're in final tuning. It's just
Little
panic.
panic juice there.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, just side note, I think that's one of the things that makes the great bands great is in final tuning, it's really no different than it's been all day. And you're relaxed and you're not panicked. And, you're just doing the last couple things you want to do, and then you're going on the field.
So you mentioned from final tuning to kind of your like lineup, you might play across that little space. Whether you do or not, though, at some point you kind of end up in a box formation outside of the circle.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to play into the circle, right?
Usually.
That's what I'm curious about that. What if you didn't play? What's your alternative? I've always played. I didn't know there were other options.
Yeah. So in the EOSPBA, in grade 5, it's optional. You can tap into the circle formation and you don't actually have to play in. It's optional at the moment for grade 5 bands. And then we also occasionally have these concert formation things that have been popping up where instead of playing in a circle, bands are playing in concert formation. And I think in those instances, I think you tap into your concert formation and then you start from a stationary position. I think. I'm not actually sure about that.
Yeah. See, this is something that I'm very fuzzy about because I feel like sometimes, and I don't know what the decision making was or if it's because of different events. I feel like sometimes we have a march in tune, then we stop, and then we start playing. But I feel like more often we're opening with a march and we're competing from outside of the circle. That's when the competition starts. We strike in, we play our march, we march in with it, we open up, and it moves on to the other tunes in the set.
That's usually the way it needs to go, yeah.
So this is a little different from your solo experience where it's like, it's not like you get in front of the judge and then at some point competing starts. This is where...
Yeah. And then in different places, it's more and or less rigid. But generally speaking, the 2 roll-offs that the drummers do at the beginning of the set, that indicates when the judging period begins. And
those roll-offs get flubbed, snare drummers. It's being judged.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So the snare drummers, if they're unclean in that attack, they're going to get negative brownie points. And this, obviously, as pipers, we know in the pipe band, the attack is the thing that has to be played cleanly. And if you don't, basically... if you don't, do you automatically lose if you have a bad attack? No, but then
essentially, because it's hard to come back from a bad attack.
A bad attack is a mistake like any other. So, by the way, if the attack doesn't go great, there's still plenty of time to redeem yourself. And, oftentimes the best band did not have a great attack, but they're just such a great band that the pros outweighed the cons there.
I see. And I can definitely see how like this is an attitude thing for me, but I often feel like the attack in the competition circle like that is like what we were saying about the morning dictating the pace of your day.
Yeah.
If I had a squeaky drone or a late E or something like that, or an early E, even worse, I feel like, well, that's it. And I'm just not in it for the rest of the set, That's on me. I should adjust my attitude.
I sympathize with that, but also the past is in the past. You got to see what kind of stuff you can what stuff you can get despite the fact that you had a mistake, especially in the lower grades, but even occasionally in the upper grades.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to overlook a mistake if the big picture is great. Happens all the time. So, don't quit just because you make a mistake. Although sometimes if you make so many mistakes that you really just, have made a complete disaster out of it. In the solos, not the bands, but in the solos, sometimes, not usually, but sometimes it is actually appropriate to break down and just say, see you again next time, because it's just gone so far south.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So as a band has done their roll-offs and they're marching in, they're playing, they're coming into the circle, they start to shift from that boxy formation to the circular formation. And you know how like we always get kind of close to where we should be standing, and then there's a little bit of just marching in place, jostling around to get into the spot. Is there any hard and fast point in that march by which you must be in position? Is it by the second tune you must be in position? Because it always feels a little bit like, how long can we jostle to get just right before we need to be solid?
So I don't think there's a specific rule about this. I don't know. Maybe there is somewhere. But generally speaking, halfway through the second part, everyone should stop marking time and become stationary. That's when it happens, halfway through the second part. So if you're marching into an MSR, you play the first part, marching in, usually by, I don't know exactly when. Partway through the repeat of the first part, you're probably turning into the circle, and then you're like jostling. And then usually by the end of, or by the middle of the second part. So after the first time through the second part, everybody stops marking time on the right foot, and then you're in your circle. And that's what happens.
I'm thinking probably a good idea for any pipe major is to plan ahead when that will be in the music so everybody knows when to stop. Just because I'd imagine it's not that big a deal if some people stop early, but it can add to the overall effect to see that all happen at the same time.
It's something that you do in practice so that you get used to it. And but then once you've been in pipe bands long enough, like me, I just that's what I do.
You feel it, right? You don't have to think about it.
Totally, man. You just feel it. No, I think you've just done it so many times that you're not even really thinking about it. And you've gotten into position and you've jostled and like, oh yeah, here we are. Okay, stop here. And then you're good. Yeah.
So for the spectator watching all of this happen, they're going to see the pipe band coming in. So now it's clear that like they're competing as they come in, they're competing when they're in the circle. There are a few usually kind of scary looking people walking around with clipboards. Those are going to be the judges taking their notes. How do you get out of the circle? Are you a guy who likes to play out, or do you like to tap out, or how do you like to get out?
So playing out, it used to be a thing. It's no longer a thing. Bands don't play out of the circle anymore. That I've seen. Maybe there's some exceptions there. I feel like in Ontario, the grade 1 bands like to sometimes play out, but I don't know if that's a thing anymore. So no, when you're done, you will exit the circle to the drum tap is what you're going to do. And sometimes you exit the circle just in the same direction you came in. So you just kind of carry on and there's an exit. Or sometimes you have to form up, counter march, and leave the way that you came in. It all depends. But yes, you're going to stop playing, and then the pipe major will say, good job, guys. All right. Let's reform by the drum tap. Quick march. And then you kind of form out.
Have the judges stopped judging us after we go quiet? So really the way we get out isn't technically part of the competition, right?
Correct. Exactly right, Jim.
So they might still be judging us, but...
No, probably not. At that point, by the way, Jim, at that point, they're really done judging you because they have to get their comments done before the next band comes on. So they're really not judging you. So they're
probably so focused on that you could do what you wanted. They wouldn't even notice.
You just have to form up and tap out of there. And you're done.
Is it just my perception, or did the playing out of the circle used to be kind of like a victory dance flex move? Like,
right.
You'd have like that's when you would play Pumpkins Fancy as a band with harmonies or something wild like that.
Yes. No, Jim, by the way, you're totally correct. That used to happen a lot as a kid. We used to love that. We used to love watching the bands do that stuff, but they just don't do it anymore. I don't know what happened. Is it cheesy? Is it weird? I feel like, when a band plays terribly and then does a march off tune,
Yeah.
I would find myself rolling my eyes at that. I think
What do they call it in football? Excessive celebrating or something like that, right? When you make a touchdown and do too much dancing around afterward.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if it ever comes back, I'm not going to say that I'm unhappy about it. I think it is kind of fun, but.
All right, so there you go. Solos and bands are now done. It's time to just kind of, what do? I think at Play the Mass Bands, I think a lot of bands allow the having of a beer or two not once your competition is done, maybe before the mass bands, and then we'll go play the final mass bands. We'll get the results, then we can go home. If you're the winning bands typically march off the field, victory march. That's your moment for the victory march there, Jim.
So it will come up.
All the loser bands, I'm sorry, the losing bands, all the losing bands have to watch them do it, which by the way, is awesome. We all love that.
Yeah. And they're then required to walk off of the field slowly with their heads hanging low and their bagpipes dragging in the grass behind them.
No, it's worse than that. They make you play Green Hills and the Battle's Over while you play out of the mass bands. It's like, oh my God, the last thing I want to do as a loser is play more.
Yeah.
But there you go, Jim. I think that's it. I think that's the end of the day. I think we've done that. This has been a day at the games with Jim and Andrew.
Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us. If you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that, your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.